Hi, it's Tish here, Tish Hawken. I'm the Inner Strength Coach. Welcome everybody. For those of you who are going to watch on my Facebook Live, please type #live. If you're watching live, #replay if you're watching replay, or #newbie if you're a new person, you've never seen me before, watched me before. I'd love to know who you are and where you're watching from. So this is my usual Monday live, guys. Today's episode is all about how to feel confident and in control when you're feeling lost and sort of in the wilderness, and you're really uncertain, unsure of what to do. And when you're in between a place where you've been and a place where you're going to, metaphorically, and you're in that in-between phase, what we call transition. So when you're in the middle of a transition. But before I talk about that, I'm just going to say, for those people who are watching on YouTube, because I do upload these videos to YouTube, obviously you can't comment in the comments box when I ask people to comment. So if you do want to get in touch with me, you can contact me via Facebook, or you can contact me via my website, tishhawken.com. So who am I? Some already know who I am. So as I said, I'm Tish Hawken, and I'm an inner strength coach. My background is in therapy. I've got a therapeutic background, and I worked in mental health in the UK. And now I have a coaching business as a life coach, but I call myself the inner strength coach because what I do is I work with women, women in business or women in corporate, who are normally quite successful, but unfortunately life has dealt them a curveball and they're really struggling to get back on track. And this curveball is causing a lot of anxiety, worry, fear, but it's also stopping them in their businesses and affecting their work lives as well. And so that's where I come in. I act as their confidant and their coach, and I work extensively and intensively with them over a 90-day period to help get them back on track to where they were, and even possibly better than they were. So if you are joining me, guys, please let me know. I'd love to be able to interact with you. I specialise in self-esteem, which is self-worth, self-value, and self-belief and confidence. Because more often than not, when life throws us an emotional curveball, it's very easy for us to spiral down into low self-esteem. So that is what I specialise in. So it's now 10:06 in Abu Dhabi. I'm coming to you live from Abu Dhabi. This is where I live with my husband and my two daughters. No, my one daughter, my eldest daughter, is back in the UK. So I'm guessing around the world it's all different times. Back in the UK it's now 2 p.m. So I'm guessing not many people come on because they're at work, etc. But that is perfectly fine. So if you have struggled with feeling like you're in the wilderness, so one minute you knew where you were going, the next minute you had no idea where you were going, something happened and you feel like you're in a little bit of a transition, this is for you. So do you feel at the moment like you're lost? You're in the wilderness, maybe you're neither where you once were and you don't know where you're going, and you just feel there's maybe a change happening, a transition happening, but you just feel a little bit out of control. It's probable that you are in some kind of transition. Now, life is progressive. It's always moving forward, whether you want it to or not. So transition happens when we get sort of thrown out of our comfort zone. So as I say, it could be a place where you once were. You were very comfortable. You knew what was happening. You're very comfortable in your life. Maybe it was quite routine. And then something has happened where this isn't the case anymore. And you're sort of in between where you once were and where you're next going to be, metaphorically speaking. So it could be anything like you've had a relationship breakdown. So you were once really comfortable in a relationship, always going well, and the relationship has broken down, and you're feeling lost and you're feeling anxious and hurt and in pain and worried about the future. So you're going from being in a relationship to being single. and it could have happened really, really quickly, and you're really struggling with that transition of not being in a relationship anymore. You're struggling with the fact that you're single, and it's bringing up all kinds of things for you. It could be that you're transitioning from being employed or part-time employed, and you're transitioning into being self-employed, and it could be that it's been brought about beyond your control. So you could have been made redundant, and you have to go through a transition of now not working, and what you're going to do, what you're going to do from here. It could be that you've been a very successful career woman and you've never had children, but you find that you want to have children, and you're just about to give birth, or you've just had children, and you're finding it really difficult, that transition between a woman who didn't have kids to now a woman who's about to have a child, or who's got a newborn baby. So the transition can be lots of different things. There's many more examples. Now, transition can be brought about either by our choosing, because we want to change something, or somebody else has made that transition happening. So for instance, in the case of a relationship, it could be that the other person has entered the relationship, and you've been thrown into this place where you didn't think you would be, or it could be that you've chosen to stop being in a corporate job, or a full-time or a part-time job, and you want to go full-time with your business, or you want to develop a business or start up a business. So you can be in control of the transition, or the transition could have been brought about by other circumstances. But whatever the case, transition can really catch us out, even if we have chosen it ourselves. So even if we've instigated it, it can really catch us out if we're not prepared. So let me just talk you through a little bit of an analogy. So if you think about the seasons, so we've got obviously, winter, spring, summer, autumn. And when we go through these different seasons, metaphorically speaking, we have to prepare for those seasons. So, you wouldn't go into summer wearing winter clothes, would you? You know that it's coming up to summer, so you would start to prepare for summer. You would get your summer clothes out. You would maybe invest in more summer clothes. You would think about, brilliant, I can start to maybe take off the winter quilt at home, and you would start to prepare for that season. And then maybe after summer and autumn comes in, you start to think about, I'm going to get my boots out, I'm going to start getting that thick, heavy jacket out. And so if you get what I'm saying, what we do is we prepare for these new seasons in our life, and to do with the weather. And it's exactly the same in our life. When these new seasons of our life come in, we need to be able to prepare for them. But sometimes if we get caught out, if we don't know these are coming, it can be really, really difficult, because what happens is our minds, if you think about where you are right now, so if you're really comfortable right now and you're really enjoying life and you're exactly where you want to be and you don't want to do any transitioning, when you think about it, our minds are actually conditioned to be in that state. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. So I moved here to Abu Dhabi in August of this year. So I knew I was coming to Abu Dhabi, and I knew what I was coming to. I knew that I was coming to a much hotter country with a completely different lifestyle. So I knew that. I was prepared. I'd visited beforehand. But my mindset was still conditioned to be in the UK. So when I transitioned from living in the UK to living in Abu Dhabi, it was difficult, even though this is an amazing lifestyle and I'm incredibly blessed to live here and incredibly lucky. There was still a transition period that I had to go through, because my mind was so conditioned, A, to the UK time zone, B, to the UK weather, also being able to have the routine I had in the UK, to be able to see my eldest daughter every day. And so my mind was conditioned, and it took quite a few weeks for me to do the transitioning over. And in those few weeks was really quite a difficult time to do the transition. It became quite frustrating and sometimes a little bit overwhelming. But eventually I transitioned into this lifestyle and into this way of life and into this country. Because what our beliefs once were, where we were in our lives, when we transition to a new place, our beliefs and behaviours, we carry them over, and sometimes they don't serve us to where the new place is, where we're going. So say, for instance, you've come from a corporate background and you've transitioned in the last couple of years or months into being an entrepreneur, into being self-employed. You will bring with you what your mind has been conditioned to believe and to do with corporate life. Like, the harder you work, the more you will be rewarded. You have to work a certain amount of hours a day. Maybe you're used to having a boss. And when you get to being an entrepreneur and being self-employed, you don't have a boss, you're the boss, so you have to motivate yourself. So that's a transition. You don't necessarily have to work, really, really, really hard to get, to earn lots of money. There's different mindsets and concepts that we have to adopt when we transition from corporate into being an entrepreneur. So I'm sure you can understand this and you get what I'm saying. If anybody's got any comments, by the way, if you're watching this on replay or whatever, please do let me know if any of this resonates with you. So when we go into that space, because transition is the space in between what you once knew to where you're going to be, and it's the space in between. And if we're not prepared in that transition, if it catches us out, it can lead to crisis. Now, when we say crisis, sometimes we get some really, really poor negative connotations of crisis. But what I like to think crisis, how I like to describe crisis, is it's an emotional place of concern. So it's not a place where we're completely happy, where we're completely feeling joyful and happy. A crisis can be on a scale, can't it? So the crisis that we go into when we're in transition, if we're not prepared from it, can be anything from a mild crisis to a quite severe crisis. But what it can do is bring feelings of fear, doubt, frustration, panic, anxiety, and confusion. I know that when I'm in transition in any kind, and I've been through a lot of transitions in my life because I'm in my 40s, I've been through a lot of transitions, I struggle with a lot of confusion. But what I've come to learn is that when there's a lot of confusion, that normally that's a sign that you're transitioning and that there's going to be some kind of calm. It's a little bit like if you've got a snow globe and you shake the snow globe and all the thoughts are all over the place and your thoughts are like the pieces of snow in the snow globe. Once that snow globe settles and you reach to where you next are going to be, then the confusion stops. So sometimes clients come to me because they're in a transition in their lives, and they come to me because they want to find clarity, they want to find calm, reassurance, and control. And this is because if you're running a business, as I've said, most of my clients are running businesses or they're in the corporate world, they're quite high up in the corporate world. Most of my clients are used to dealing with stress and dealing with problems and things that they need to solve. But sometimes some things in life, transition can really catch them off guard. And so what they come to me is for clarity. So clarity to understand exactly where it is they need to go. What do they need to do to be able to come out of this transition? And clarity of vision of what they want to see for themselves when they come out of it. Calmness, because transition, as I said, can bring up feelings of anxiety, of fear, of panic. They want to be able to feel calm, so I can help them make anxiety. Reassurance as well, reassurance that transition is normal and all of these feelings are normal. And control is a big one, especially if you're an entrepreneur, because you tend to be able to take control quite effectively. And so when people feel out of control, it goes against what their beliefs are and what their values are, and it can really send them into a spiral. So what we work on is how to get control, and the way to be able to get control is by some 6 steps that I'm going to give you now about how to manage transition in your life. So remember what I said, transition was anything from, going from being in a relationship to being single, from moving house, from going from employed to self-employed, and from going to having no children to being pregnant or just about to have a child or just had a child, and the list goes on. But that transition basically is from where you are now or where you were to another place where you're going to be, and it's that bit in the middle that can be really confusing, quite upsetting sometimes, and very uncertain. So here are the 6 steps I've got for you to be able to manage transition, and I've wrote them down here because I don't want to be able to forget any. I want you to have them all. So the first one is recognise that you are actually in a transition and accept it. Now, transition can take myriad of different time scales. It really depends on so many circumstances. You can be in transition for a day, an hour, a week, a month, a year, 3 years. Hopefully, not as long as 3 years, but you see what I'm saying. There seems to be, one of the classic long periods of transition is when we lose somebody. So if somebody dies, somebody really close to us, that period of transition can be really, really long and really, really painful. So that transition is probably one of the most difficult transitions that you will ever come across. So yeah, step 1 is recognise that you are in transition, and it's going to take some time to be able to get to the other side, out of that transition where you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and accept it. Don't fight it, just accept what it is, even with all the feelings that are being brought up, all the thoughts and the feelings that are being brought up. Then after that, after step 1, step 2 is you need to find some kind of direction. If you're feeling lost, and especially if this is a transition that has been brought about beyond your control, if you're feeling lost, you need to be able to find some direction. You need to be able to brainstorm about what it is you actually want now from your life. If life has changed really dramatically, you want to be able to brainstorm and write down what it is you want from your life. And once you've got a general direction of where you want to go, you want to be able to then pull out some specifics, really, really start to steer your own boat and pull out the specifics of where it is you want to go, where you want to be. Think about in 3 months, 6 months and 12 months, maybe even 5 years. Have a vision of what you want your life to be like. Be really specific. What do you want people to see in you? What do you want them to notice? What do you want to be able to feel? What do you want to be able to see around you? How do you want to be? How do you want to be able to be conducting yourself? What do your finances want to be like? How fit and healthy do you want to be? Really be specific. Look at every area of your life. Step number 3 is, when you're in transition, so you've recognised it and you've accepted it, you've then got a direction that you're going to, and you've pulled out all the specifics. Step number 3 is then start gathering the knowledge and the skills and the strengths and resources that you need to get you to where you want to be. Because when you're in transition, sometimes, let's say, for example, let's pick another example. So say somebody wants to really grow in their business. They really want to grow their business, and they know there are lots of things they need to do to grow their business. But one of the things they have to do is grow themselves. And that will come in the form of self-educating, self-development, personal development, gathering new knowledge about how they need to grow, gathering new skills. Maybe they need to learn new marketing skills. Maybe they need to learn more sales skills. But what you need to do when you're in that transition, with that example of going from being a smaller business to a larger business, is you have to then take full responsibility of controlling that transition and coming out of it the best you can. And you take responsibility by gathering the knowledge, doing the work, developing your skills, developing yourself, and also looking inside for your own personal strengths of when you've been in transition before. What did you do? How did you manage it? What are you good at? What can you use again? What did you do then that you can use now? So once you've gathered all of that knowledge and you're on your way, you've taken responsibility, you know what skills you need to acquire, you know how to grow, then what you do is you plan exactly what you're going to do. So you've recognised it, you've got your vision of what you want, of how you want to come out of this transition. You've gathered the knowledge, you're getting the skills, you're developing as a person. You've drawn out the strengths, and then you're planning and organising exactly how you're going to help yourself to come out of this transition. Now, I also believe that, you will come out of this transition when life is ready for you to come out of the transition. Some people say the universe, some people say God, other people call it, source energy. But I really believe that in divine timing, in source energy, that's the sort of the spiritual side of me. And you can plan as much as you want to, but also, you have to sort of work with life. You will know when the time is right, when to put that plan of action in. You will know, it will feel right, and you can put your plan of action in to help you move that transition and get to the next level that you're going to. What you also need to do, step 5, is just check that where you're going to actually fits with who you are, that fits with your values, as in what is important to you. There's no point you say you've been made redundant and you think, right, I'm gonna go into business for myself and I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to learn everything I need to learn. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. But what's important to you is to be able to work 9 to 5 and to be home for the kids when you're home for the kids, and to be able to, have lots and lots of holidays. Maybe you've got 4 to 6 weeks holidays a year in your job, and maybe you find it valuable that you and your partner are finish work at the same time. If you go into business by yourself, yes, you can choose your hours, and yes, you can be there for the children, but what you will find is that you will be possibly working some evenings, and it won't match up with what your partner's doing, or maybe you need someone to mind the children, during the summer holidays or whatever. So you have to, when you're doing your planning and organising and your vision, you really have to decide, is where I'm going, is this transition where I'm taking me to, does it fit with me? It's the same if you come out of a relationship. Say you come out of a relationship and you think, okay, I'm transitioning, I'm single now, and I've got to transition into that mindset of being a single woman. I can do this, I'm going to be single, it's all going to be great, fun and dandy, I'm going to have loads of fun, etc. But actually, if one of your core values is to be in a relationship and you're happy in a relationship, it's not going to work for you, because you're going to be miserable single, because what you'll be doing is always looking for that relationship. So I'm sure you can understand what I'm saying. So make sure that when you set your goals, set your path, set your direction, that it actually does fit with what's important to you and how you like to live your life. And step number 6 is, if you're struggling with transition, if you really feel you can't do it on your own, then reach out and speak to somebody. Reach out and speak to somebody who can help you with transition. Talk to somebody who has been through transition. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same type that you're going through, but somebody who knows about change, who knows how to embrace change and how to really welcome it in. Somebody who you've seen do that, speak to them. Or if there's nobody like that, reach out to somebody like me, a coach like me. It doesn't have to be me. I don't fit for everybody. Not everybody wants to work with me, and everybody isn't a fit to work with me. But reach out to a coach who can help you, a personal coach who can help you get through that transition so that you can put your feet down on the ground when you get to the other side and you know exactly where you're going and what you are doing. So transition can be a sign, obviously, of growth. It means that you're growing. But also what comes along with transition is loss as well, a feeling of loss, a feeling of what was. And that can be a difficult thing to let go of. And any kind of loss is a grieving process. So some people seem to think that, and understandably, that grief, that loss means grief. That the only way that you can grieve is by somebody dying, but actually you can grieve if you with any kind of loss. You can grieve the loss of a job, you can grieve the loss of a relationship, etc. And so you have to be prepared when going through transition that you may have feelings of grief, but they will pass if they're dealt with correctly. But always remember that life is working for you. It's always trying to nudge you in the way that is best for you. It's always giving you little nudges, and sometimes if you're not listening, it gives you a really big nudge that you can't ignore. I'm just going to give you an analogy now. Some of you may have heard this before, some may not, but I just think it's such a great analogy. It's called the lobster analogy. And I first heard this, I was actually scrolling through YouTube, and I heard a Jewish rabbi tell this story, and it was just so great the way he told it. I'm not sure I can tell it the same, but I'll tell it anyway. So lobsters, obviously when they're born, when you see, if you watch a David Attenborough, nature documentary, lobsters are born as tiny little things with tiny little shells. And so they go around their daily lives, then they live for quite a long time, and they go around and they're swimming. And obviously they grow. So how do they grow and how do they get bigger shells? Well, what happens is they start to feel quite uncomfortable in their shell, because obviously a lobster is that meat, isn't it, inside the shell. It starts to expand and grow. And the lobster feels this pressure and feels this stress. And so what it does is it sinks to the bottom of the sea. It finds a little rock that it can be protected from. And it gradually sheds its old shell, and it waits there for a while until the new shell that fits its new bigger body grows. And then once that grows, it's nice and comfortable, there's no more pressure, there's no more stress, and it goes, swims off, and off it goes. Now this happens a few times with a lobster, because they get bigger and bigger and bigger, don't they? You can get small lobsters or really big lobsters. So the next time it happens again, the lobster starts to feel the stress and the pressure, and it instinctively knows that it needs to go back to the bottom of the sea. It needs to find a bigger rock, and it needs to shed the old shell, because the old shell is not serving it anymore. If it stayed in the old shell, it would just become incredibly unbearable and incredibly uncomfortable. So it has to shed that shell and adopt a new shell. And so again, it sheds that shell, it waits for a while under this rock, and then it grows the new bigger shell. And the most fascinating thing that this rabbi said was, isn't it funny how when people feel the pressure and feel the stress of life, that they go to the doctor, go to the GP, and the GPs prescribe, antidepressants, diazepam, anti-anxiety, all of these things, because we as people don't generally deal with stress and pressure really well. And if we're educated in this stuff and we understand it, it's easier to deal with, because we understand what's happening and we know that it will pass if we deal with it in the right way. And so can you just imagine if lobsters had doctors? They'd all be dishing out, antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills, but they don't, do they? They do what nature intended them to do, and that is shed the old shell and grow a new one. So I'm sure we can learn some things out of that. I know that I certainly have done over the years. So that's my Monday live for you today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any comments, please do let me hear them. Put them in the comments box. If you think somebody might benefit from this, then please feel free to tag them in the comments box. If you think a group of yours or somebody's page would benefit, then please feel free to share it into that page or into that group. For those of you who listen on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I produce a video every week. And also just click on the bell notification to get notifications of when I release a new video. If you'd like to contact me directly, please feel free. It's tishhawken.com. Contact me on Facebook, Tish Hawken. I've also got a free group. So if you're somebody who is looking to develop grit and resilience, maybe you've got low self-esteem, you're a woman in business, you're a woman in corporate, and this time you're just not being able to recover, you feel you're in a hole, then please do come into my free group. Just put in the comments box group please, or message me, direct message me, and just say please can I be in the group, and you can be in that group for free. That's where I put advice, support, tips and videos, and also I put resources in there that you can do in your own time as well, worksheets, etc. So it's been great. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I shall see you next time with the next topic. Take care. Bye.